Hello everyone, I am Amanda Washington. Welcome back to my channel, Theater from My View. On this channel, I discuss shows I want to direct and how I would direct them, theater artists in the industry, and I share any directing tips that I can with you. Today, we are going to be discussing playwright Leslie Lee's play, The First Breeze of Summer. But before we get into it, a few things. 1, I post a new video every Friday at noon. So 2, don't forget to like and subscribe to this channel because 3, next Friday's coming quick, fast, and boom, in a hurry, and you don't want to miss it. All right, are you ready? Let's get into it. All right, so a brief synopsis of The First Breeze of Summer. It is a 3-generation play. African Americans living under one roof. You have Grandma, spelled G-R-E-M-M-A-R, Grandma, and she is the eldest. She is the matriarch of the family. And then you have her 2 kids, Edna and Milton. Edna doesn't live in the house. She lives down the road. Then you have Milton and his wife, Hattie, and they have 2 kids, Nate, who is the oldest, and Lou, who is the youngest. And this show is really a coming of age story, being able to face the truth about the things that you perceive in life, or face the truth about how you have misperceived things in life and how you deal with that. Why do this show now? What makes The First Breeze of Summer something that should be produced in 2020? Well, with everything that is going on in our current era with Black Lives Matter and people of color not having rights or not being seen properly by the world in many cases, this show gives a perspective to the African American life. Many of us in the theater industry are familiar with Lorraine Hansberry's A Raisin in the Sun or August Wilson's Fences, but those 2 shows are also about the African American family and the African American plight, but then you get something completely different with Leslie Lee's The First Breeze of Summer. So I think holding all 3 of those plays up together, you see the different perspectives, the different ways African Americans interact with each other, and then you come to realize as an audience member, as a reader, there's different ways to view a culture. The one perception that we've been given, or the one perception that we've always grown up with or been taught, is not necessarily always the correct one. There's many ways to view something. And so I think that is a perfect reason why we should do this show now. Also, Lou, the youngest character, and I would arguably say the main character, he is a young teenager, African American, that is coming to terms with his sexuality. And in this day and age, I definitely think what we need more of is saying it is okay to be who you are. So those are just a couple of reasons why I think we should do this show now. Passing down of culture is a major theme in this show. In one of the scenes, Milton, Hattie, Grandma, and the Reverend have come into the house and they have started praising and testifying to the Lord about things that they are thankful for. Well, the 2 younger kids, Nate and Lou, they come into the living room and they see what is going on with the elders. And once the elders are done testifying and praising, the elders look to the younger kids and it's like, all right, y'all go up there. Y'all go up there and tell us why tell God why you're thankful for him. And Nate, the oldest son, he goes up and he's like, I'm glad you gave me life. Glad for this day, glad for this family. He's very hesitant. He's very reluctant to do this. You can obviously see what he's being asked to do doesn't sit well with his soul. Lou, on the other hand, the youngest son, he goes out there and he's completely transformed. He's taken to this other realm spiritually almost. And you can just see the 2 differences between Nate and Lou. And while Lou is up giving his testimony, Nate is off in the background looking at his brother like, what has overcome you? And the elders are just so proud of Lou for being able to connect spiritually in such a manner. And so after this moment, Nate pulls Lou onto the porch and he's like, look, little brother, this ain't what we do. Like, what you just did, that's cool for a show and all, but that's not really us. That's not really this younger generation. Leave that to the older folks. But Lou, he combats his brother and he's like, no, I really felt connected. I really was in the moment. I was in the spirit and I felt as if I was being broken free from chains. And so I said the theme, a major theme, was the passing down of culture. In the African American culture, religion is a big thing. It is a way that slaves coped with being transmitted from one country to another. And so I believe that has been passed down from generation to generation. And in the moment that I just described to you, you see if these characters will reject a part of their culture or will they accept it. And I'm not saying one is right or wrong. I'm just saying, what about your culture do you want to keep perpetuating? And what about your culture are you saying, all right, this stops with me? That's definitely a question that the actors and I would discuss when we got to this scene. And a little bit about how I would direct this. So for when Lou is on stage really being transported in this other world of spirituality, I would almost want this ritualistic dance to happen so that the elders know, or that the elders see, that he is being passed a piece of their culture. So from older generation to the younger generation, maybe even like a laying of some type of garment, like, now this is yours, since you have come to accept a part of the culture that we have been trying to give you. That's just a little insight into how I would direct that scene. Another major theme is, do people really see you? So there's this character, Joe Drake, in the show. And Joe Drake is this white, affluent businessman. And he has done business with Milton, who is a plasterer, for years. And so Joe Drake goes to the house. And when he goes to the house, he sees Lou on the porch. But instead of calling Lou, he says, "Hey, Nate." And at first I thought this was just, a lapse of thought for a moment. But then as the scene progresses, something about how the scene was written and structured, I was like, this is not a lapse of thought. This is not a lapse of thought. So what happens later on in the scene? Well, a little bit of backstory before I get into what happens later on. Milton, who is a plasterer, he never charges other people the correct amount of money. He always lowballs himself. So in a sense, he is not saving and he's barely being able to provide for his family. Well, Nate, who helps Milton in the plastering business, finally convinces his father to charge people the correct amount of money for their labor, for their services. And that first person starts with Joe Drake. So back to the story. Joe Drake goes into the house. Milton hands him the estimate for the plastering of the house that he wants done. And Joe Drake talks him down. He's like, "No, y'all are amazing plasterers. You're always prompt. You're always cordial. The job is well done. I never have any complaints, but I refuse to pay you this amount of money." And Milton's like, "Well, I have to make a living for myself. I have to be able to provide for my family. I also want to put away a little bit of money into savings." Well, Joe Drake continues just to talk him down from the price. And by the time Joe Drake leaves, he has talked Milton down $400 from the original asking price. And that may not seem like a lot of money now, but in that time period, $400 could have done a lot for a business and for a family. So Joe Drake has talked Milton down $400 from the original asking price. And so the reason why I put Joe Drake into the category, into the theme of, do you really see people for who they are, is because if Joe Drake and Milton have been doing business for years, and Nate also helps Milton out with the family business, he has been doing so for many summers, and now he has done it consistently for a year. Why didn't Joe Drake notice that Lou was not Nate? And does Joe Drake really notice the people who he works with if they are under him? Why not pay somebody what they're worth? If you are doing well in your own business, if you don't really have a care or want for anything, why not pay the workers that work for you what they're worth, unless you don't see them as equal to or even human beings? Another moment in this show where I would really question if someone is seeing someone for who they truly are is between Lou and Grimoire. And so Lou, like I said, is the youngest generation, and Grimoire, she is the oldest. And I think we all have that special relationship between somebody who is drastically older than us or somebody who's drastically younger than us. And Lou hangs this woman on the highest pedestal. She can do no wrong. She is the beacon of light and hope for what an African-American woman should be. However, as a reader, as an audience, we find out that Grimoire has lived her best life when she was younger. When Grimoire was younger, I would say around her late teens to mid-20s, she has 3 children. Okay, Amanda, 3 children. What's that? What's the problem with that? 3 children out of wedlock. Okay, Amanda. All right, we see 1920s, 1930s. That's not really a thing. 3 children out of wedlock, 3 different men. Whoa, buddy. Whoa, buddy. And so when Lou finds that out, he is distraught. His perception of what he thought his grandmother was is shattered. And the question I would ask the actor is it so shattered that you can't rebuild this relationship? And spoiler alert, he can't, because she dies. But I think his perception of her is so broken, is so shattered, and he's devastated is because he himself is trying to come to terms with who he is. As I mentioned earlier, he is a man who is struggling with identifying as he identifies through his sexuality. And so I think he looked towards his grandmother as, if she can be this pillar in the community, then I won't have to succumb to these feelings that I'm having. But then he finds out that she's a woman who's lived her life. And he's like, well, what does all of this mean? How do I process that? So that's just another theme that I would like to highlight. How do people perceive you? And how do you deal when your perception is shattered? The option to do what you want. There is this character in the show called Pop, and Pop is a doctor. Now, some more context. He is a doctor that got his medical license in, I would say, the 1910s or 1920s. And in that time, people were not as open to going to an African-American doctor. And so Pop is unable to make money being a doctor. And so he takes a job at a train station being a porter. Fast forward 1970s, when Lou is about to finish up high school, he tells his parents, I want to go to college to be a doctor. However, his family's like, we need you here so you can help out in the plastering business. And his family doesn't necessarily support his dreams of wanting to be a doctor. Hold that up to Pop, who wasn't supported by society. And so you think you have this freedom, even though so much time has passed between 1920 and 1970 and how Blacks or African Americans are viewed. But you don't necessarily have that freedom, that option to do what you want to do. And I really would love to review with the actors who play Pop and Lou, how much of being repressed, being held back, does that affect you? Especially for Lou, who is dealing with his sexuality. That's just one more thing that he can't really express because no one in his family, other than Grimoire, supports his idea, his dream of being a doctor. So that repression of not being able to do what you want to do. Another instance in this show of not being able to do what you want to do and then being compared to someone who can or who doesn't have the pressure to figure out what they want to do is Joe Drake talks to Lou about his son. Joe Drake's son is similar to Lou's age, around 17 or 18, about to finish high school. And Joe Drake is saying how his son doesn't want to join the family business. And Lou, understandably, can relate. Lou wants to be a doctor. And then Joe Drake makes the comment, but I don't care what he wants to do. As long as he's happy, he can do whatever he wants. And I can just only imagine what Lou is feeling like. It's crazy what money and race can do for you, because Joe Drake's son doesn't necessarily have to have that pressure of committing to what his parents want to do or to serving his parents in order to make him happy. Lou, on the other hand, has to make some choices. He can either go to college, but without his parents' support, which would be extremely tough to do, or he can stay at home with his parents and help them out, but he wouldn't really be happy. And a lot of it does have to do with his race and the financial situation that they're in. How I would direct that moment between Lou and Joe Drake is really just looking at the reproach that Lou may have towards Joe Drake, but then also towards his family. I wonder if at that moment there's just a little bit more resentment that is planted inside of Lou towards his family, towards his father, Milton, who is really a vocal advocate of, I want you to go to college, but I also need your help here. I wonder how much angst is seen from that point on in Lou. Just a couple of questions I would have for the actors when we got into rehearsal. A perfect sentence to tie all these themes together, I would say, is to unveil the truth. Because throughout this entire story, throughout the majority of the characters, their arc, we see that they're coming to terms with the actual reality that they're living in. The veil of childhood, the veil of innocence is being lifted, in some cases torn. And so how do you deal with that? How does that affect your later judgment? And can you rebuild those relationships that are broken? To unveil the truth, I think that's so prominent, especially since today is June 19th, and that is when slaves were told the truth about their freedom. Thank you so much for joining me. Next week, I'm coming at you with a directing tip, so I'll see you then. Bye-bye.